Hi, I'm Aliash, and today I'm going to present to you one-home Lua scripting. Sometimes, in certain projects, you have to do some custom automations, and if the drag-and-drop block style is not enough, you can now use a proper scripting with Lua. Let's get going. Here we are in the one-home dashboard. We have many rooms with different devices, and now we'll do some Lua scripting. You can use Lua scripting both in automations and in scenes. For the purpose of this video, we will use it in automations. If we create a new automation, let's call it Sunrise Lights. What we can do first, we have to create a trigger. So when this script will be triggered, in our case, let's do a trigger that is on at sunrise. And let's select Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, all the weekdays for the trigger for this automation. Let's click update and let's also click save. Now what we can do, we can click a plus button, and here we have different kind of blocks that we can use in the automation. In this case, I will select the Lua scripting block, which will be automatically opened. And now we are already presented with our Lua editor. You can see there is some code already present on this side, and you have certain inputs and outputs. I will explain more about this a bit later. And on the right side, you have different helpers that will be able to help you to build your script. You have settings for timeout and for some additional things, and run, so that you can run the script directly from this editor. Let's see. So if we first go and maybe run this script here. Let's go, we click on run, we click run again, and now we can see the script was successfully run, and we can see in the output hello world as it's printed here. So quite simple. Let's remove this code and let's look on the right side under helpers what kind of options within the Lua scripting we have. So inputs and outputs are set up first on the left side. Basically, what this means for inputs, we can get data from the system, for example, devices in. We will do this in a few next moments, and then use it in the script. For outputs, we can send data to the other parts of the automation in the background, so we can do some additional actions if we want to. But usually we can do all of the things also within the Lua script if that's our preferred way. Then we have Lua syntax on this side. Here are some examples, for example, for variables, to learn what kind of variables are possible to be used here. We have, for example, a function. For example, here is a sum. And if we, for example, run this, we can see that, okay, the result of 5 plus 7 is 12. And all the different kinds that you can go through. We also have some math. You can read and write to KNX. You have time functions, HTTP, JSON, and all the different functionalities available here. So now let's create an actual script. In this case, we will do a sunrise simulation on a light. So with the trigger that we've set, for every weekday on the sunrise, we will perform this script. And what this script will do, it will simulate a sunrise effect on a specific light. Let's remove the code we have right here. And first, we'll have to select the light on which we want to do that. For that, we click on Add Input and Device. We could also select a value from a previous block, but in this case, device is fine. We select the device, and let's say that we want this in Lucy's room. We want to do this on a color light here. And we will name this light, let's just name it light. We click add. And now we have a variable that we can use where we can access everything that there is on this light. It is also shown with all the helper functions here in the inputs on the right side. We can click the light here, and we can see all the options. You can have the current on-off status, you can toggle it, you can get the level, so the brightness, you can get different kind of things. And here, what we need, we will be setting the level, setting the brightness. I've clicked on this shortcut. We can close this, I will not need it right now. And I can see that there is a code already appeared here with which we can set the light to a specific brightness. So For example, we will select a value to be 100%, and here on our light, we will set this value. In case the light will not be reachable or something, we will log an error, otherwise this will happen. We can even try this right now. So if I go under Run, and I click Run, we can see the script is running, it was successful, so the light was turned on. Now, we don't want to just turn the light to 100%, we want to simulate a flow of the light so that it represents sunrise. So here, what we will need a for loop so that we will be able to slowly increment this. If I go under Lua syntax, I have a for loop here, and if I click on it, I get a template code already in the editor. So now we can see that there is a for loop that goes from 0 to 10, and that you can then do something within the for loop. Now, one thing I can do is to go from 0 to 10. This is the same as writing like this, and this, the last number, means in what increments it goes. So we can adjust this script to actually use the brightness that goes from 0 to 100 in the increments of 10. Now, what we can do, we can copy the code for actually setting the light, and we can paste it into the for loop. And instead of a value, we put in the brightness. Now, of course, we have to sleep a little bit in each turn so that we actually simulate this brightness change over time. We can go under the time section and insert the time sleep. We can see, as it's written in the comment, that 1000 means 1000 milliseconds, and this means 1 second. So if we actually go and use this value, we will have 10 seconds of the time of which the simulation will go from 0 to 100. And what we can also do, we can also do a log, for example, log info, where we will write that the brightness is, for example, so brightness is, and input in the brightness. And this way we'll be able to see in the logs as the automation is progressing what brightness is being set. Also, because this takes 10 seconds, we should check if there is a timeout that is large enough. So in this case, it's set to 30 seconds, so it should have enough time to run. Now I can go under Run, and let's run this automation. Okay, so brightness is being set to 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, and 100. That's just a simple example. Of course, you can expand this. You can do this to go like much more, like 1000 times or a period of a minute to have a really smooth effect. You can have a period of 30 minutes for this. You can do some conditional things based on the presence in the room, etc. But for this case, I think that's about enough. Okay, so if we close this view, we can see that this script is also presented as a block. What we can do is we can also test run this automation. We can select a trigger and click Run. And here we can select different parameters for running this script. In this case, it's just time because no other inputs are necessary for the script to run. And we can select, for example, a different time so that we can test if it works on Saturday, if it works on Sunday, in the morning, in the evening, etc. But since we have sunrise here, we don't need this. So let's just click Run. And now we can see that the whole automation is running. Inside also our script block is running. And if we wait about 10 seconds, it should then show as successful. Let's just wait a bit. Here we are. And what we can do in case we see some errors, we can see the logs to understand this, but we can also go back to the script block and run the script from there and maybe see the logs better there as well. The last thing that we have to do is, of course, enable automation, and that's it. So now that we have done this automation with the scripting block, we can try and do something a bit more complex. Let's say that you do not have a weather station on your project, but you still want to use weather data like outside temperature, wind speed to open up the blinds in case the speed of the wind is too strong. We can use an online weather service to do that. Let's create a new automation. Let's call it weather. Create. And since we will be sending the data from the weather service to KNX, let's do this, for example, let's click time date and let's click every minute. Click update and click save. Now let's again add the Lua script block. Okay, we already have a prepared example for a weather station service kind of thing where we will send data to KNX. And we can go here under example and weather API example. And I click on it. And we already see that code was pre-filled. So there is quite a few things explained here. You will usually not need all of that. But let me just go through this so that we can see what's going on. So here we are using the OpenMeteos API, which has a free and a paid version. Free is used for the personal project. For commercial, you need to get a commercial API plan. But for this example, we'll use this. And what we can do here is we can do an HTTP GET request, for which we need an URL. We got the URL from the API. And what we will also input is the location latitude and location longitude of your server. This is automatically detected, but if you want to fine-tune it, you can set your location latitude and longitude in the system settings of the OneHome server. Now we can do an HTTP GET request with this specific URL, and we can also check for status codes. If the status code is not 200 or there is an error, we can log it and abort. In case then that this was successful, we can now parse the response. Here we have specified that the response is JSON, so the parsing is already done automatically by the server, but we can then go further and take out the values outside of this that we need. Here, as we will see a bit later, we will already print the whole response. This is a good way for you to analyze the return data, so it's easier for you to create the following code below. And then basically what we do, we take from the response different values. We have the outside temperature under response current weather temperature. We have wind speed. We have wind direction degrees. We have, if it's day, we have all different weather codes. And based on the weather codes, we can also calculate if it's sunny or it's not, or different kind of weather states. We have also added the different weather codes below here. And we can see there are 0 is clear sky, 1 is mainly clear, 2 is partly cloudy, and it goes all down to the thunderstorm with heavy hail, which hopefully never happens. But this is what we can use for weather forecasting. We can also tweak the API call in a way that it will show us also the future forecast for tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, etc. But now we have received all the values and we just log them so that we can see what's going on. Now let's go under run and let's do that. Click run. And the script is running, and here we've received all this information: the outside temperature, wind speed, wind direction, is sunny, is day. And above we also printed the whole response, which is printed here. In this line, you can also analyze it. There are more data that you want to use. But now, what can we do with this data? Now we have it in the script, and now we can send it, for example, to KNX. We can change the devices, etc. Let's first see how we can send this data to KNX. We will do this for the outside temperature, so that we can display it on a touch button or use it in like some thermostat logic. So now we can send data to KNX. For example, we will send the outside temperature. We can go under the helpers and KNX, and we can select the correct data point. For this one, it would be 9001. Let's just use a different group address here. I will just use 777. Of course, you can use whichever one you need or want. And let's put in the outside temperature. This will be sent to the gateway TP, twisted pair. And what is great, we can use the One Home's KNX traffic monitor to monitor if this will be actually written to the KNX bus. How we can do that? We can go in the One Home dashboard and go under the traffic monitor, and under the KNX monitor we can do the live monitor. And here we already see that the traffic is already being recorded. And now if I go back and I click run and run this script, we will be able to see this traffic in the monitor. So let's click run. It gets the data. The outside temperature is 16.5 degrees. If we take a look in the traffic monitor, we can see that this telegram was sent on the bus with the temperature 16.5 degrees. And this way we see that the automation worked. Okay, so that was sending to KNX bus. We can also use this to check if the wind speed, for example, is too large and close the blinds. But if you do not want to do these kind of things in the script itself, we can also always create an output and use this data in the next steps of the automation. So let's just show you this. If we create a new output and we say the outside temperature, let's do it like this, and we do that this is a number, default number should be 0, but this would not be sent if the API call fails, so for this case it's not important. We save it, and in the helper sections under outputs we now see this outside temperature here as well, and all the functions, and we can use the set function here. Now we can see that on the outputs outside temperature we can set it. We will use our local value here that we have taken from the API call and put it in outside temperature. And now if I click save, you will be able to see that this outside temperature is available in the next steps of the automation. So if we would want to send the telegram here, we can go under the action block, the add new action block. We can then click add. We can then click write to KNX, select TP, select group address, in our case 777. It also, since I already have it in ETS, it automatically selects the correct DPT. And here, instead of a specific value, we can insert dynamic data, and you see now in the results from previous blocks, we have the script block with the outside temperature that we can use here. And if we click update and save, we will see that we will write, after the script block is finished, we will write to the group address 777 this value of the outside temperature. So in case you want to have scripting only for things that you cannot do with other logic blocks, you can use it there, and everything else you can do with the classic drag and drop editor. So we can again run the script here and see if the telegram arrives. Run automation, use current time, click run. And here we would again in the traffic monitor see that this telegram arrived to the KNX bus. This weather automation is another example of how you can use the Lua scripting. Of course, there are other use cases for Lua script. For example, one common use case would be converting different KNX values so that they can be used within other systems. For example, if you have a Modbus air conditioning unit that has different modes, for example, that the heating, cooling, auto, off are having the different values, different numbers compared to what is required by KNX HVAC control mode, you can do the conversions here in the Lua script and send the actual data to another group address just to do some certain transformation. Here is a bonus point for you. Of course, in modern day, you don't write all the code yourself. You're using, for example, ChatGPT to help you assist. And you can help yourself with that also in the One Home Lua scripting. Let's see how to do that. If I open up the Lua script, now we see we have all this weather code that we already set up with the template and some corrections, but let's just remove that. And let's see how we could write this same code with ChatGPT. We have to prepare some context for ChatGPT to understand how to do certain things within the Lua scripting in One Home. To do that, we have to create a selection of things that the ChatGPT will be able to use to create this script. What we will need an HTTP GET request. Let's just create this one as an example. And we will need a KNX write DPT, in this case 9000 for temperature. Okay, now we have these two things and we can copy them now to ChatGPT and we can provide it context. We can say, create a Lua script that fetches the data from openmeteo.com and uses the below write to KNX function to write the outside temperature to KNX. Here is a sample syntax that you can use. Now that we have context ready, we can paste in what we have prepared and we can click run here. Okay, let's see. Here is actually the request already. And let's see, let's just copy it and let's look in the editor what it does and if it works. Let's copy, let's paste, and let's see. So it takes latitude and longitude. Here you could use our provided functions already. It creates the URL with the latitude and longitude. It does the request, it checks for the status, and it gets the temperature. It gets the temperature here. It logs error if it's not available. It even logs it so that we can see what the temperature is, and then it uses this the temperature to write it to KNX bus. And let's run and let's see what happens. Okay, script ran. The outside temperature is 20.3 degrees and it was successfully written to the group address 1/1/1. Of course, we need to know that when we use LLMs, we have to check the code so that there is not something weird going on, but it can be a useful tool for you to more easily create your Lua scripts. I hope this helped. So here it is. That's Lua scripting block for you. I hope this will be very useful for you. I'm very much interested in what kind of scripts you guys will be working on, and I'm sure this will help you fulfill more projects and do more unique and powerful functionalities for all your different One Home server installations. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, let us know down in the comments. See you later.